So Juneteenth, of course, was the liberation of it was celebrating the liberation of slavery, but obviously slaves were freed 2 years before that under Abraham Lincoln. But what happened was that the Emancipation Proclamation Act didn't go into effect in every other state, specifically Texas. Texas is one of the states where they economically relied heavily on slaves, and so they wanted to really take advantage of the little time they had. So Juneteenth was when the last sector of slaves were freed, and that is why it is such a big holiday. It's been more of a big holiday, obviously, because of what's been happening with George Floyd and the protests and the police brutality issues. But a lot of people just weren't aware of this. I vaguely remember learning about this when I was younger, but it is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of ending slavery in the U.S. It was in 1865 on June 19th that Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed in Galveston, Texas, and they had news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. This was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation Act, which had become official January 1st, 1863. And this act, like I said, had little impact in Texas due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce a new executive order. But with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1965 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the force was finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. So that's how it came about. And so African Americans have been celebrating Juneteenth, specifically even in Pasadena. There was like a car protest that was pretty awesome. A lot of people in solidarity with Black Lives Matter and kind of bringing back as to why they're celebrating Juneteenth. I have a quick video that we can show here, just going over what it means.
Juneteenth means to me progression, transition.
Juneteenth, a cross between June and 19, commemorates the official end of slavery in Texas on June 19, 1865. That's over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed into law by President Lincoln. News of their new freedoms was slow to reach some slaves throughout the country, and historians theorize that Texan slave owners suppressed the information in order to get one final cotton harvest from the slaves. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger and Union troops arrived in Galveston to announce the war had ended and delivered General Order No. 3, which proclaimed that all slaves were free. The first official Juneteenth celebration took place in Texas a year later and became a state holiday in 1980. Juneteenth is celebrated in many ways, ranging from parades to cookouts and other activities. But Juneteenth isn't just about celebrations. It also serves as a time to further the conversation on the legacy left by slavery in the United States, and as a means of discussing ways to address it, like the hotly contested topic of reparations.
We recognize our lineage as a generational trust, as inheritance. And the real dilemma posed by reparations is just that, a dilemma of inheritance. It is impossible to imagine America without the inheritance of slavery.
First sponsored by John Conyers in 1989 and reintroduced every session until his retirement in 2017, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act tries to tackle the subject. The bill is now sponsored by Texas Democrat Sheila Jackson Lee in the House and Senator Cory Booker in the Senate.
Though I am gratified that we are having this hearing on Juneteenth, for those of us who understand Juneteenth, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, there were those Africans who did not have freedom until 1865. H.R. 40 is in fact the response of the United States of America long overdue. Slavery is the original sin. Slavery has never received an apology. This commission would be comprised of members selected.
Okay, so as you know, it's a lot of discussion on reparations. Obviously, we're going to all need to discuss and how that would go about. Right now, there's a climate where I think it can be pushed, but I also think a lot of people are going to stand against that as well. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's definitely on the horizon. Bam.
Yeah.
Anything?
I mean, it's such a crazy. It's a discussion that needs to happen, because there are so many situations when you see the United States government giving reparations to groups like Israel and these other groups, and then you say, well, why don't these people, this group receive reparations or whatnot? And I mean, it's hard to argue against that when they're giving them that money. But there's also an argument to what reparations would actually do. Would it solve the problem? Would it just be soaked up and sucked up like the rest of the whole nation's money is right now as well? We see the disparity between the elites and the lower class. And, no matter what decision is made on reparations, and I'm, an open book for this, I want to talk about this more with most and some other people and get their opinions and speak about it. But I don't think reparations will be effective unless we fix this whole system too as well. You know what I'm saying? We have to fix the whole system, because if we just give out reparations and we leave this system in play, it's just going to suck up that money and those resources anyways. So, I mean, we definitely have to sit down at the table for it and stuff, but I think we also have to keep an eye on the prize. It's not just about reparations. It's about actually fixing the system, you know what I'm saying, and moving forward together as a nation, as a group, as a world, as a humans to do so. So, I mean, that's where I stand on reparations.
I mean, I think we can do both. Yeah. I mean, I think reparations is specifically
we need to do both.
Black Americans. Yeah. I mean, and then aside from that, then obviously we know that the bigger focus is the elites. But I mean, I think we can do both 100%.
Yeah. See, white people are right here and people of color are right here. We all need to get to right here. So no matter what, even if we went to here, what is that going to do for us, right? You know what I'm saying? We're still all suffering. There's still, every year the homeless number goes up. Every year people die on the streets. You know what I'm saying? And we're still all over this nation fighting and killing and doing whatever. We need to all get here. We need to all find a way to come together, which that means we have to close that gap too as well. There's no argument there. I mean, the argument in the 80s and 90s was really hard to get away from it when there was a white middle class and, people of color were being redlined left and right. And it was really, really at war. Now it's a situation where the elite are just gobbling up everybody. Once again, still we do receive, as a white man, we get, better treatment than everybody else. But once again, I'm saying we all need to get over here somehow. Yeah. And elites need to come down. So, of course, I'm for, closing that gap. But once again, we all need to move forward. And that is going to take us taking on imperialism more than anything and coming together.
Agreed. And any super chats, fam, that you want to read?
Well, let me see. Did I miss some, Johnny?
No. Okay.
Nope, not yet. Sorry, my bad.
So the speaking of money, the Atlanta Police Department, under the Atlanta Police Foundation, paid $500 bonus to every police officer in Atlanta this past Thursday. And it's going to add up to more than $2 million in more money that this foundation has raised. And apparently this is not city funds, but it is a nonprofit. And they said, we felt like it was important at this time because the morale is at the level. There is the rumor of officers leaving, and we just do not want to lose good police officers. This is David Wilkinson with the Atlanta Police Foundation. And they're also going to be purchasing 20 police cars to replace those that were destroyed in protest a few weeks ago. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of a terrible idea for the Atlanta police to be giving bonuses to police officers when there's such a contentious situation in Atlanta, and when there was a murder and there's that, and people have been protesting nonstop. I just think it's really, really bad move. I think it just empowers people to continue to be angry that these officers, a lot of them haven't been arrested, haven't been convicted at all, and yet they're getting bonuses. Again,
it is a nonprofit, right? So it's not from the state.
Yeah, so that's why.
You know what I'm saying? And Pam, I don't know what it's like. I can't even go to McDonald's and get myself a Big Mac. I don't know why you're talking to me like this. I mean, listen, there's always going to be a group out there that is going to stand behind the police, stand by what they do. And I get it that some people who join the police department are doing it because they just want a job and they want to help and be part of society, a small amount. I think the majority of policemen are people who are insecure, who can only get security or confidence if they get a badge and they want to bully people. And we definitely have way too many racist within the police department all across this country. And that it's due to the non-screening. I mean, it's so ridiculous when we talk about this almost every single show. 6 weeks to be a cop, and there's not a serious screening program, and there's, you're not held accountable when you kill somebody. It's just, it's crazy. And something, has to be said. The fact is, if you are going to go out there and join the police department, I have a couple friends who are police department, work for the police department. One in particular in LA, he's a really good guy and stuff like that. But when you join the police department, you are joining the arm of the imperialist authoritarian state.
Yep.
Period. Know that. So whatever you got coming to you is coming to you. That's who you're representing. That's who you're standing behind right now, especially when you're arresting and shooting at journalists. You know what I'm saying? Graham talked about it the other day on his show too as well. When you guys got arrested, know who you're working for, know what you're standing for. And I don't give a shit because people say, oh, well, what am I supposed to do? There's nothing we can do to avoid being part of the capitalist system. Capitalism is one thing, which is bad in its own. But when you're joining the arm of the imperialist authoritarian state,
right,
you get what you deserve. I'm sorry. And that's what the police department has become, the way they've been militarized, the way they go after press. You reap what you sow. So whatever's coming to you comes to you. So I'm so sorry that you're crying that you can't have a Big Mac. But guess what? You've been jailing people for the prison industrial complex at the behest of the elites. So you get what you deserve. Oops.
I agree. 100%, fam. I mean, I think the police absolutely at the very least need to be, I don't even think reform's going to do. It needs to be entirely rebuilt. Because if they're reformed, they're still going to keep those same behaviors, those same tactics that are the militarized form of oppression. And I think that's something that has to change from the foundation. And fam, you're going to love this part right here. As a TV doctor, Grey's Anatomy, one of the writers, Krista Vernoff, went on a series of tweets talking about white privilege. And she really explained it really well. How all these things she did, and she never got arrested. She never got a record. So I'm just going to read a couple of them because it's a really long thread. She said, when I was 15, I was chased through a mall by police who were yelling, "Stop thief." I had thousands of dollars of stolen merchandise on me. I was caught, booked, sentenced to 6-month probation, required to see a parole officer weekly. I was never even handcuffed. Then she said, when I was 18, I was pulled over for drunk driving. When the police officer asked me to blow into the breathalyzer, I pretended to have asthma and insisted I couldn't blow hard enough to get a reading. The officer laughed and asked my friends to blow. And when one of them came up sober enough to drive, he let me move to the passenger seat of my car and go home with just a verbal warning. When I was 19, I got angry at a girl for flirting with my sister's boyfriend, drunkenly attacked her in the middle of the party. I swung a gallon jug of water full force at her head. The police were never called. When I was 20, with all my strength, I punched a guy in the face while we were both standing 2 feet from a cop. The guy went to the ground and came up bloody and screaming, and he me arrested, that he was pressing charges. The cop pulled me aside and said, "You don't punch people in front of cops," then laughed and said that if I ever joined the police force, he'd like to have me as a partner. I was sent to my apartment and told to stay there. Between the ages of 11 and 22, my friends and I were chased and or admonished by police on several occasions for drinking or doing illegal drugs on private property or in public. I have no criminal record. So again, she says here at the end, if I had been shot in the back by police after the shoplifting incident in which I knowingly and willfully and soberly and in broad daylight ran from the cops, would you say I deserved it? Because a lot of people, of course, go back to, okay, well, the gentleman at Wendy's, oh, he was drunk driving. Okay, so he deserves to die? Like that's the thing. Like there's always that mentality of blaming the victim, like, oh, he ran away from police. He shouldn't have done that. Okay, maybe he shouldn't have done that. But did he deserve to get shot? No. That's the thing. That's something that she's trying to point out, and as a white women are very privileged in that way. Like I've been watching, I was watching the other day When They See Us, which is on Netflix. And it's about, in 1989, these 7 boys were accused of raping a white woman who happened to be an investment banker in Central Park. She was very, very wealthy. And they were poor. And basically, the NYPD was famous for doing this. They coerced a false confession. They made the boys blame each other. And they put them in jail for crimes they didn't do. There was a trial. And this would have never happened if it wasn't, if there weren't those racial tensions. They had absolutely set the names they called them, the way they referred to them. And Donald Trump was, of course, put in that show. He was put because during that time he was in New York and he was wealthy, and he went after he was a Democrat, but you could tell he had those racist tendencies. But also, let's remind ourselves who was president there. In the beginning, it was Bush, then it was Clinton, and then Clinton in 1994 signed Joe Biden's crime bill. So again, that completely took what we're seeing here and what we saw in 1989 with those boys, how the black community and black children, I mean, these boys were 14 years old, were seen as predators, super predators, as Hillary Clinton called them, and thugs. And that wasn't just the Republicans. It wasn't just them. It was both the Democratic Party and the Republicans. So I encourage people to watch that, because it really shows just how like for the longest time, and Krista, I think she's older. She's in her 40s or 50s, if I'm not mistaken. And how they vilified the black community and said, oh, these people, these kids come from crack mothers, and all of these things they said that were awful. And so there's definitely that disparity that we're still fighting. I mean, some of the things you could take from that serious in 1989 and apply it here. People were still out protesting. Little has changed. Very little has changed, except now we have cameras and we have cell phones. So
yeah.
It's definitely there.
By the way, Anthony Allen left the super chat for $5. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, Anthony Allen left a super chat for $5. Thank you, Anthony, for that super chat contribution. It's always appreciated on this couch, even appreciated in this nice yellow chair I'm in, Sam.
Yeah.
I have to take a look at that too. And also somebody, Faint Signals of Vega, left a super chat contribution and said, please interview Dr. Stephanie Kelton on her easy-to-read New York Times bestseller, The Deficit Myth. Excellent, important for the leftists to understand. #MMT. And I think it's really important to understand right now what's going on too as well. Money's made up. Any way you look at it, it's make-believe, it's pretend. Money isn't just a monetary system built in for control. You know what I'm saying? It's about resources, what the planet gives us, what we need. You know what I'm saying? And I'm even more concerned right now about the water that's really going under attack all around the world. So I mean, and I haven't checked out that whole situation. It's kind of funny. There's a boxer out there who I know, Big Baby Big Baby Jarrell, and he had talked about the reason why he doesn't like Donald Trump. And he's from Brooklyn. He's from that area. Is what he experienced as a little kid and how Donald Trump had handled that situation. So I'd like to see more about it. A lot of people were saying that, he was kind of trying to show sympathy for the woman. But once again, this was a rich white woman. Not to say that she deserved anything that she got if she got raped. But I mean, it's very easy to, kind of buy into that whole situation and point the finger at people who really, were just being accused simply for the color of their skin.
Yeah, they were just kids in a park, and they were accused.
That's it.
And that's it. And Rashard Brooks, of course, was murdered. And he did it's kind of scary how he did a little video right before he died 4 months ago. And Brooks speaks about the agony of being trapped in prison, because he had been in prison before, and the probation system, and how just that. Okay, people talk about, well, you committed a crime, you deserve to pay. Okay, so he did his time. No. But then he came out and he couldn't get back on his feet because it's on his record. And again, I mean, I think for drugs, alcohol, anything like that, you shouldn't have something that ruins your record. I mean, Krista was stealing and she didn't get anything on her record. You know what I mean? There's so many celebrities that have kleptomania and they're filthy rich and they go and steal. And like, you never hear about this impeding them from a job. But a black man, gets arrested for drugs or something small. And even if it is theft, I mean, people should have the opportunity to really try again. So let's just hear what he has to say.
Okay, well, I'm Rashard Brooks, 27 years of age, have 3 kids, I'm happily married.
things to be bettered, within probation and parole, and also monitoring. If you do some things that's wrong, you pay your debts to society, and that's the bottom line. And I just feel like some of the system could, look at us as individuals. We do have lives, it's just a mistake we made, and not just do us as if we are animals. It's making us as individuals feel like we're locked in boxes. Even though we have been incarcerated, it's hurting us, but it's hurting our family the most. Because we have kids, we have jobs, we have a lot of things that, life situations. We are individual people. So as we go through these trials and tribulations, it's hurting our kids, and it's taking away from our families. You have to try and go out, make memes, and yet my kids, I want to spend some time with my kids, but I really don't have the time. I have to try and go out, make money for this, make money for bills, or try and get myself back on track. It's just a lot of pressure, with, just having all of that on your shoulder and on your back. It's just a lot of pressure. And some people, they just can't deal with it. It's restricting us. They're telling us, hey, you have a curfew and, certain things, you have to be in a house, just restricting us from the everyday life. It's just hard for us, at times, because we're trying to do the right thing and we're restricted. Probation is not there with you every day, like a mentor or something. They're not taking you out to find a job. I feel like it should be a way for you to have some kind of person, like a mentor, assigned to you to, keep your track, keep you in the direction you need to be going. But here yet, I'm trying. I'm not the type of person to give up, and I'm gonna keep going until I make it to where I want to be.
Okay.
Yeah. See, fam, that's the whole thing, is that we look at some of these situations and we understand that, as gross as they are, the death of George Hampton, the death of Rashard Brooks, the murder, we should say, and everything like that. But we also sometimes don't look past, we look past, and we should keep our eye on the things that really affect people in a large amount of numbers every day, especially people of color. And poor white people too, or anybody who's poor, because mostly the jail system sops up everybody who's poor. And that's bail reform. You know what I'm saying, fam? It sacks people. Not only that about 75% of the people who are arrested are let go and never charged, but they have all this bail that just hangs over their head. It really puts people on the street. So, as gross as these situations are too as well, we need to find a way to tie bail reform in there. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a big issue. I mean, I'm just hoping nowadays when a cop arrests somebody, they don't kill them. You know what I'm saying? But then I understand the problems that person has to go through when they get out. You know what I'm saying? The $3,000 that's lost, that they never get back, that they had to put it just to get out of jail, not even be charged anyway. And those are the things we cannot lose sight on, and sometimes we do.
And even further than $1,000, $3,000, it's what impedes them from having a future, because if people see that on their record, they're not going to hire them. And he spoke about something about the parole officer. That itself is something that needs to change. They're there to make sure that you make a mistake. They're the opposite of a mentor. He's like, we should have a mentor that's there. That's where the police don't come in. That's where the defunding the police comes in, because the police are just doing the policing. And then you have like a social worker that's like, okay, I'm going to take care of your case. Instead, what you have is a vigilante police officer that he's just writing tickets. He's just waiting for you to miss your curfew, waiting for you to fail. And that isn't incentivizing you to progress. And he was even talking about how people are trying to, like hang out with friends, go out places, because it's hard to deal with the situation at hand. And of course, he was the one that was found in the Wendy's parking lot, supposedly falling asleep at the wheel. Then failed a field sobriety test. And so even that you can blame it not just on the criminal system that is so corrupt, but also on capitalism. He's talked about, I can't even spend time with my kids because I have to work and make money and pay these bills. So again, it's all tied together from the system of capitalism, which is all right before our very eyes. It is falling apart as we speak, and the criminal justice system is an arm of that. And so we have to always remember that we have to tackle the capitalist oligarchy that is forcing people like Rashard to really be depressed, upset, and not have the time to spend with his family, and perpetuating the cycle, because who knows what's going to happen to his kids.
Yeah, and he was talking about paying his debt to society when it shouldn't have been that harsh. I mean, it's not slavery, but now he can't even spend time with his kids. And that's what debt does to people. And I really wish a lot of people in this country would wake up too as well, fam, because now with the education debt situation, people will not be able to have the satisfaction in life. They're going to be forced to work. Yeah, they might not be told, might be forced to whip by force. But if they want a house to live in, if they want to get their kids food, if they want to, send their kids to college, any chance or any of that stuff, they're going to be subject to work even when they don't want to. 2, 3, 4 jobs, and it ain't getting any better. It's going the opposite way. Time to wake up, people. They got you by the you-know-what, and you need to shake loose.
Exactly, fam.